So, Ralph Breaks the Internet has been out in theaters for some time. My dad and half-siblings and I went to see it last Saturday, January 12th, as a little family outing we haven't done in months, and it was a really good movie. I have a couple of small complaints, but compared to most of the movies that have been released these past few years, it's amazing. It actually was the first movie in many years for me that felt like one of those fun movies of the 90s and early 2000s that people, friends, family looked forward to going to see Friday night or the weekend. Everyone had a good time. I've really missed that, and this was the first time in a while that I was able to feel that again. I saw the first movie, the original Wreck-It Ralph, I think the Thanksgiving of 2016, when my younger half-siblings were looking for something to watch while everyone else was watching football. I have no care for football. I know that's blasphemy for a lot of people, but the thing is, I don't care to just watch a sports game on TV. I will play sports. I've played baseball with family. I was never on a team as a kid, but my family and I, we have these huge summer family get-togethers, reunions, we'll play baseball, croquet, tag, sometimes reenacting, though not quite as dirty. The zombie tag, similar to Higurashi no Nakukara ni. I think it takes place in the second episode of Kai or something. Anyway, similar to that, it's awesome. I've done some martial arts. My brother and I played Daigorher. And, and I've played badminton and tennis, and I've done Aikido and dabbled in it. I was thinking of starting Kendo. There's a Kendo school not too far away from me. But if I'm not a participant in the game, if I'm not one of the players, I have literally no interest in just watching a game whatsoever. So I joined my brother and sister in watching Wreck-It Ralph. I thought Vanellope was awesome. She was cute, she was smart, she was motivated, and she is actually a snarky sweetie, but a kid who's mostly a lot of fun, and actually she kind of reminds me of Konata Izumi. And you do root for her to succeed in her goal. I thought the friendship between her and Ralph, still talking about the first movie here, was very well written, and be honest, the Sugar Rush game looks a lot of fun to play. It was designed very creatively. The whole world was, and although I did not make the connection between Turbo and King Candy until it was revealed at the end. I heard that some people said it was obvious. It was not obvious to me, but I did think the Turbo virus monster at the end was a great villain for that kind of story. On the whole, the first movie was creative and cute. The sequel begins what seems like sometime after the end of the first movie, as Vanellope is hinted to have been an officially added racer in the Sugar Rush game for at least a few months. The exact time is unspecified, but she says that she's starting to get just a little bit bored with the racetracks. Players have unlocked every new track, everything that was once an unpredictable or secret part of the game. So Ralph makes a new track in a manner similar to how he did in the Volcano Cave in the first movie, which was a great scene of him and Vanellope bonding. This time, him pounding the ground and making a new track now has the unintended consequence of breaking the Sugar Rush game steering wheel. You'll understand how that happens if you see the movie. And so Ralph and Vanellope enter the World Wide Web to try and find where they can buy a new wheel. The visual depiction of the internet, while it's probably what you would expect the internet to be portrayed as in a movie like this, still amazing. It's very bright and colorful while also being kind of one of those super high technology world. It's kind of like a cutesy form of Coruscant. There's this little search engine character who is adorable and hilarious. It feels completely unappreciated because everyone keeps coming up to him to search for what they want, and nobody says please or thank you to him, which is funny because if that's supposed to be some kind of analogy for the real world, I guess information people feel unappreciated. I mean, everyone feels underappreciated in their job. But how would you even thank a search engine? Vanellope does, and so he befriends her. She and Ralph have to find a way to earn money to pay for the video game wheel that they want because they bid this enormous amount. They find themselves directed to try and acquire this super highly sought after car that a badass character named Shank owns in this awesomely dystopian race. This game, I haven't played a whole lot of games, racing games other than Mario Kart and Star Wars Racer, so I'm trying to think of something to connect it to. It's like a car racing game going through the most destroyed city imaginable, and then they sing a song about it. It's the in this place called Slaughter Race game. Vanellope just gets the biggest kick out of this game, and she decides she wants to stay there. And that brings about the second part of the climax of the movie. What it turns into is Ralph and Vanellope, who were misfits teaming up to help each other in the first movie. Now, the sequel, Ralph Breaks the Internet, is about the two finding out that they're finding that they are beginning to belong in separate places. And they're drifting apart. The message in this movie that I think is great is ultimately just because you move apart from each other in life, develop different interests, and find yourself in different places, doesn't mean the end of a friendship. It's a brilliant message. Thank you, Disney. Stick to creating these kind of stories, new stories. Leave Star Wars alone. Pixar gave us a similar message in the movie Finding Nemo, which was about, among other things, was that Pixar DreamWorks? Well, anyway. So Finding Nemo is about a father eventually having to learn to let his son live his life, even after going through extraordinary lengths to rescue him. In Ralph Breaks the Internet, the message is about one friend having to learn to not be obsessively attached to his friend even after he goes through extraordinary lengths to help her and her friends out. Because if they don't find this replacement video game steering wheel, the Sugar Rush game is gone. But Vanellope too makes a mistake after she finds that she wants to stay in the Slaughter Race game, she hesitates for understandable emotional reasons. She very much delays in telling Ralph what she has come to want, and in doing so leaves him in the dark unfairly. He finds out through seeing their conversation take place through this little comlink thing, I don't know what to call it. Ralph understandably becomes upset. It's just taken to out-of-control levels when a digital virus copies his emotional insecurity and nearly destroys everything, until both he and Vanellope team up to clear up the mess, both with each other and with the online world. Now we get to the problems. And they're not major problems, but they're ones I really feel I need to talk about. There's this point at the end of the climax when the virus monster made of copies of Ralph. It's actually really weird monster. It's you'll see. I don't want to spoil that much. But when the monster has been defeated, Ralph falls from the equivalent of a skyscraper-like height, and these Disney princesses who Vanellope had met earlier on, we'll talk about that in a minute. So the Disney princesses are all gathered around, they're watching this happen, they look up and say, "Look, a big strong man is in danger." And they use their elemental powers to save him. They put him in a Snow White dress as he falls, which is meant to be seen as funny by the movie. But if you think about what this is actually saying, though, is that in order to be in need of rescue, or even worse, deserving of rescue, a man has to be put in a damsel in distress-like role or situation. They symbolically turn him into a princess in order to put him in the position of being rescued. And if you see it through the scene enough to see it that way, it is a really mixed message. That in order to show a man being rescued, he has to become like a woman. Effectively, the gender roles have to switch, and that is exactly what this scene is depicting. Hold on, Blackie. Sorry, my kitty cat is meowing loud. Okay, so the scene, what it's actually doing is reinforcing that the two sexes have to switch roles in order to show strong women and weak men, which is a complete contradiction of the idea that women can be warriors and men can be vulnerable. And I'm thinking, pick one. You know, it would not look so ridiculous, if the movie had just dropped the, "Look, a big strong man is in trouble" lines. If they had just showed the princesses rescuing Ralph without putting him in Snow White's dress, meaning if they had just used their elemental powers creatively as they did, but not added in the commentary, it would have been a cool scene. But the narration that people feel they have to add in ruins it. It is also an obnoxious scene when Vanellope stumbles into the Disney princess's, I guess, dressing room, or common room. I sort of feel both a hesitation, but also a want to call it the harem room, because if you know anything about the origin of what harems were, the word harem actually refers to, in ancient world kingdoms, the women's dwelling places. It did not originally refer to a collection of brides or prospective brides, or it meant the quarters, or women's wing of the palace, if you will. If you watch anime, both Fushigi Yugi and The Story of Saionkoku, those are the two that I know most well, who that use the term correctly. I'm sure there are others. They refer to it as the dwelling place of the women in the king or emperor's palace. And that is exactly what this room that all the Disney princesses hang out in brings to mind. And I also probably just inspired 1,000 weird fan fictions about that. What's obnoxious about this scene is the line that was so heavily featured in the commercials and the trailers for this movie. Vanellope says that she is a princess, neglecting to mention that she's the only Disney princess who, even though she was joking, who ever sentenced anyone to death, to be executed, which was hilarious. When it played at the end of the first movie, I've heard stories of everyone in the theater, like, gasping, shutting their children's ears. It's like, what the? But she was joking. Then the Disney princesses, from Snow White to Moana, ask her all of these "have you ever been?" questions. She says no to all of them, and then comes the line the princesses ask her, "Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?" "Yes, what is up with that?" says Vanellope. Now let me explain why this is so obnoxious. First of all, think back to the first movie, Wreck-It Ralph. Vanellope and Ralph do about an equal amount of rescuing of each other. It worked very well, in that movie each used their individual strengths and talents to save the day, to help each other out and to accomplish their goals, and to rescue each other. Where in that movie, or this one, where was it ever assumed by anyone that Vanellope's problems were solved because Ralph showed up? Where did that take place? They helped each other out. The same can be said for Moana and Maui in Moana. Same in Tangled, same in Mulan. Mulan and Shine both save each other's lives. Same in The Little Mermaid. Ariel saves Eric from drowning twice. Eric slays Ursula, but, giant ships spike through that. What was that? He pierced her with, that sharp part of the ship. No matter, you know what I mean. Frozen had an odd structure to it. And most of the other movies were based on fairy tales where the princesses, and princes for that matter, weren't really the main characters. If you go and read the original fairy tales that many Disney movies were based off of, a lot of them are more the villain's story than the prince and princess's stories. And Sleeping Beauty, even in its original form, was different in that it was told from the point of view of the fairies. This is perhaps the most common criticism of the live-action Maleficent, that it ruined the fairy characters that were really good in the Disney animated movie, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. So the problem is this assumption that the princesses only have their problems solved because of the big strong man or the heroic prince, that this sort of line implies is just not true. Vanellope has no reason to say yes to this question other than that the movie just repeats a narrative that's way too prominent in our world today. It's not true. Case in point, that I come into contact with myself. In the Natural History Museum that I volunteer with, there is this Women in Science Day that is hosted each year, and we're told we need to have it because there's this perception in Western culture that women don't have what it takes to be scientists, or that they don't fit the image of what people normally think of as a scientist, which, maybe you don't think of a woman as your first choice, maybe you do, but here's the point. Not a single male scientist that I have ever worked with or been taught by thinks this way. That is not a perception that is held by men. And even if they don't think of a woman scientist at first, they don't judge by it. This is not something that manifests as keeping women down. But the fact that we have to keep having programs, especially for girls and women, as if just having, say, an alternative would be a day dedicated to inspiring or speaking with kids interested in science. Both boys and girls wouldn't be enough. But that should be enough. And in fact, we have several of those a year. But that women, we keep having to have programs and events specifically for girls and women because there's a systematic discouragement, or even a perceived one, of girls. Perceived discouragement of girls is annoying because it's not true. It excludes boys, and it's a narrative that I don't like. This falsehood constantly blared in everyone's ears. It actually holds everyone back. If there is any discouragement of girls or women in the Western world, it's this narrative itself of telling girls that this perception does exist when it doesn't. It's a lie. And I admire motivated girls too much to like that lie being all over the place. I refuse to tell girls that. Because not only does telling them that there is this discouragement actually make them feel that there is when there isn't, and it means we have to have programs that leave boys out. I will not take part in any event or program that does that. I will not support a lie. The scene at the end of the credits where Ralph and Vanellope play the pancake milkshake game is adorable. That poor bunny. It is at the end of the credits, which take a long time to go by, but you do get to listen to a different mix of Slaughter Race during the credits. So maybe it's worth enduring them just to be able to listen to that and then see this video. I trust you're all aware that bunnies do not eat pancakes, and you should not give a kitty milk. It actually gives them indigestion. Cow's milk does not mix well with the stomach of a carnivorous mammal like a kitty cat. So, after taking all of this into consideration, as a whole, the Wreck-It Ralph movies are amazing. They are definitely worth watching as a child and as an adult, especially with friends or family. They are great. I keep slurring a bit. The dental work I had early December is still kind of slurring me a little bit. I apologize. It's annoying to me too, but in any case, these movies, on the whole, apart from things I pointed out that do annoy me, on the whole, these are great movies to show your kids. Just be mindful of what I went through. Ralph Breaks the Internet will probably be out of the other theaters soon. Wreck-It Ralph, you can already buy. Get them or rent them. Grab a snack. Sit down with your friends or family. Enjoy the movies.